All right, now we're going to actually start creating our particle simulation. So first off, what we want to do is you notice that we already have a simulation node in the scene. We have this object sim, and this is the simulation that we use to actually create the object destroying. So what we want to do is we're going to use the same shelf node up here, particles, source particle emitter. But what we want to do is we want to make sure this doesn't by default just put new dynamics nodes into the existing dynamics network. Before, we haven't had any dynamics networks in the scene that we've had to think about before, so this hasn't been an issue. What we want to do is we want to go over to this little brain down here, this icon, right? And this can enable and disable simulations. But also if I right click, you see that I have a create new simulation option. So I'm going to do that first, right? I'm going to create new simulation, and it'll create just an empty auto.network. network. And now you can see I have a drop-down menu here where there are a variety of basically places that are going to be the default dynamics networks where the system is going to place new nodes. So now instead of having that say object sim, I'm just going to say auto.network, and we're going to rename that first to particle sim. So we're doing some of this stuff in a bit of a different order because we already had in our object sim network there. We just need to make sure that now when we make new nodes, it places them in the right place. Let me go to this menu here again. I'm going to make sure we're selected particle sim, which we just renamed. I'm going to hit the C key, color this purple like I did with simulations. So now I'm going to select my particle source object node and do the same thing we did before, reduce source particle emission. And now you can see instead of creating a new auto.network node, we're in the node particle sim that we'd created because we had assigned that down here on our little simulation drop-down menu. So let me go up. Okay, so the system did create our default source particles node, which as we've used before, this is our particle result out of the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag these down. I'm going to drag this source particles node down here, and I'm going to call this particle result. And so now, unlike our previous projects as well, where we just had one particle source, in this project we have two particle sources because we have the particle source object and the particle source ground hits. So now I'm going to select the particle source ground hits. For good measure, I'll just turn its display flag on and select it. And now again, with making sure that our particle sim is still selected in our little drop-down menu here, again, I'll just hit source particle emitter. And now you can see that we're back in our particle sim dynamics node, and it's created another pop source node, and it's merged that into the previous one. And then there you go. It's automatically put in there. That's why by default, there are all these merge nodes in these objects because they're set up already knowing that you might be bringing a bunch of different things in, and it's all set up to merge them all together. All right, let me just drag these down so we have a little more room. I'm just going to clean this up so these are next to each other. Pull these up and over here just so we have a nice clean layout to work from. Okay, so now we've created our particle simulation and we've brought in both our particle source object and our particle source ground hit sources. And next up, we're going to start tweaking our pop source nodes to start getting our initial particle behavior to be the way we want it to be.